Hey UConn Nation, it's KK Arnold here. If you're looking for the latest UConn women's basketball content, go subscribe to Listen Up to Phil and Ryan. Go Huskies!
Listen up, Ryan. It is Huskies 2023-24 non-conference schedule on this beautiful Thursday, August the 31st. That's right, Ryan. August 31, the last day of August. Man, Ryan, and it's that much closer to you and I didn't really know that we are going to get treated right off the bat. I mean, we thought we might have had to wait until the cooler weather, the winter weather moves in, or when it gets very cold out, the weather that you don't know if you can fly in or travel by car in. But hey, we're blessed right off of the bat. Talking about schedules today, specifically the UConn women's basketball team. We're treated to a special treat as we get to travel up north in November as Maryland faces UConn, Ryan. So again, that much closer to the season as we flip the calendar tomorrow morning. Ryan, I'm going to turn it right over to you like always, and you tell us. You said, I think, what is it, 14 games I'm looking at here. And, we can't, obviously, now that I talk about it, we can't leave out. We won't talk about it the whole 15 minutes we're on. We still have time for comments after we get down to business on this non-conference schedule. But, hey, it's hard to believe after I turn it over to you how you could leave out, since we're actually going there. Hey, first time for you and I. We can't wait. It's hard to believe that you cannot talk about that Maryland and UConn game. 23-24 non-conference schedule.
Yeah, I know we're definitely really excited for that. Been talking about it for a couple years. So, yeah, definitely excited to finally get to make a trip up to UConn and see the Huskies in person. So that will definitely be a fun one on November 16th when UConn and Maryland do play up in UConn Stores, Connecticut. But UConn, once again, will have one of the tougher schedules probably in the whole nation this year. They will face 7 opponents that finish the season inside of the top 25. So half the opponents on this non-conference schedule finished in that AP top 25 to finish the season last year. 3 of the games on their non-conference schedule are homecoming games, and some of the games I wanted to highlight for the Huskies, starting with Paige Beckers, as UConn will travel to Minneapolis to face Minnesota. UConn will host Ball State, where Nika Mule's sister plays, and UConn will travel all the way up to Toronto to face Toronto Metropolitan. Aaliyah Edwards is an Ontario native, so I thought that was a pretty interesting game. Toronto Metropolitan, not sure how they got that game on the schedule, but that should be a pretty interesting game. UConn also plays Texas. That will be a part of the Jimmy V Women's Classic on ABC. Another pretty important game to highlight there. They do have 2 games, Friday, November 24th, Saturday, November 25. Both of them are in the Cayman Islands for the Cayman Island Classic. The opponents are TBA on that, so we'll just have to keep an eye out for all those teams that they have a chance to play for the Cayman Island Classics. But yeah, I mean, and also I think probably the biggest game on here is the last one, Sunday, February 11th at South Carolina. No, a lot of people are going to be circling that one. UConn probably already has it circled on their calendar. Definitely probably expecting another really tough game. I think those two have been battling out as we've witnessed the past couple of years. So I think, besides that, a lot of these opponents, like I said, are pretty tough. Maryland, Texas, North Carolina, also in the Basketball Hall of Fame Women's Showcase. That might be a pretty interesting game. Louisville as well, probably another difficult game. Notre Dame, of course, a team that UConn has struggled with lately. And then, of course, South Carolina. So definitely not the easiest of schedules. I probably have UConn winning most of these games, but definitely Maryland, Texas, and South Carolina, and possibly Notre Dame. Those are probably the 4 opponents, if I had to highlight some, that are probably going to be the toughest on this schedule.
Yeah, now that you bring it up, I have to ask you again. We don't have that much time. We have to get down into comments. I just want to ask you about that. UConn leads 9-4, the all-time series, and their last meeting was February 5th, like you mentioned, of this year. What do you take away from this? I don't know if you want to call it a new era of this kind of rivalry, this matchup at South Carolina. It's bad enough already that UConn has to travel into that kind of territory. But again, you need to win, right? Either way. So at the end of the day, what is your take that we saw? Obviously, one of the biggest, arguably one of the biggest names in women's basketball, Leah Boston, get drafted into the WNBA. What's your take though on how she dominated UConn for so long, and then what as far as there's still big names on this roster? As I look at South Carolina, you still have Camila Cardozo, you still have Ashlyn Watkins, Ryan, Chloe Kitts, Bree Hall. You remember these names as well as the whole nation, and as well as I do, Raven Johnson. So again, do we still see the same kind of South Carolina team come out? I know there's been a lot of talks with LSU. I get that. But specifically this South Carolina team, and I ask you this because in the last couple of years, especially since we've covered the UConn Huskies and started this podcast, there hasn't been, as far as in our eyes, there hasn't been a lot of bigger rivalries in women's basketball than South Carolina and UConn. So again, is it almost like UConn has the tilt? They're just all out favorites, or do you still see a lot? I personally see a lot of toughness still coming out of South Carolina.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of turned in one of the bigger rivals, I'd say, in women's college basketball in the present day between UConn and South Carolina, especially after that championship game. And ever since then, they've played every year. But yeah, I was kind of expecting South Carolina to fall off a little bit after they lost most of their starters to the WNBA draft. And most importantly, of course, Aaliyah Boston, like you mentioned, she's been tearing it up in the W as well. So that's great to see out of her. But I don't really think South Carolina is going to lose that much of an edge. I still think they're going to be pretty competitive in the SEC. And like I said, it should be a pretty interesting game. We're going to know a lot about both these teams, UConn and South Carolina. It's right at the end of the season, February 11th. So I think most of the teams will be established by that point. And I think South Carolina is going to continue to come out firing. I think the SEC is going to be an interesting battle between South Carolina and LSU all season long. So I think it's still going to be a really close game. Hopefully not a blowout. I think it's going to be a really close game. I think it could go probably either way, but I think in terms of South Carolina losing an edge, I think they'll eventually figure it out despite losing a lot of their starters and, of course, their main player, Aaliyah Boston.
Yeah, of course, bad news for you and I and the rest of the UConn family. But again, it's very hard for me to see South Carolina taking that step back, even though they lost a great player that had over a 50 percentage on field goals and around 14 points. Her career stats, it looks like 14 points, around 14 a game. And then she dominated the boards. Remember, Ryan, you have to remember that, around 10 rebounds in her career. So again, it's curious to see what South Carolina does inside, especially in that late season matchup against UConn. All right, Ryan, here we go. One of your favorite parts of this podcast, UConn Huskies go undefeated on European tour. Rorick, very happy to hear, guys, Amari is recovering from back surgery. So again, I forgot to mention to you, I love how we're starting to see more comments fill up about in the comment section about Amari DeBerry. Never give up, right?
Yeah, and like I said, it was such a great sign to just see her come into the game for a couple minutes during their last game that UConn played. So it is definitely a good sign that possibly she is fully healed from that injury. So definitely a really good sign. It's kind of still a question mark as to what Amari's capabilities are this season and what we can kind of expect out of her. whether she can make a couple of starts in the starting lineup or if she's going to have most of the impact coming off the bench. It's really hard to tell with most of the players, I'd say, but especially Amari because of the injuries she's been dealing with and not quite being able to live up to her potential, I'd say. So definitely really interesting player yet again for UConn, Amari DeBerry. But I think we're all hoping the best for Amari this season.
Adam Edmonds, I see you, Phil, showing off the fresh cut. Ryan must be scared of the barber. Just kidding, Rye. I'm glad Amari finally got some minutes. Do we know if it was a coach's decision that she hadn't played, or was it related to her back pain and rehabilitation?
Well, I mean, I would assume that, for the first couple games, it was probably precautionary leaving her out of the game. But I think it's a good sign and definitely leaning in towards a positive direction that she did come in for that game. And although, like I said, only playing a couple minutes and not being able to make a lot of impact, hopefully she didn't get re-injured in that game. But yeah, I take it as a positive that she was at least able to come in, and there's still, a couple months before the regular season and a lot of time for her to work on her mental health and her physical health as well before the season starts.
It is what it is. I love that username, Ryan. None of this matters. They can win their conference and make the Final Four, but they not beat LSU, period. You all can break down player for player, but it's a wrap once the tournament starts. Oh, boy.
Yeah, I think
Oh
I
man.
think that's
Are we say Ryan? I mean, should we just cut it short here? Lights, camera, action, turn it off. And hey, this podcast is shut down for the year. No, I'm just kidding.
when we went over those players that LSU got, Haley Van Lith, and then those two that they got in the transfer portal. I think most of the nation and all the women's college basketball fans. I think the consensus was that LSU is going to the national championship, and obviously the favorites catapult to the top. Anissa Morrow was the other player, but they still have the whole season to play. They definitely win on paper for most of their games that they're going to play. But I think that the question is if they can put it together on the court, play together as a team and grind it out through the whole season is still a lot of question marks for a lot of teams. So we'll just have to see. But I still think, in my opinion, that the SEC is going to be pretty competitive. Definitely not an easy place to play for any team, but obviously expecting LSU to make a run in March Madness, but I wouldn't mark them down as the national champions yet.
The disruptive one to cap it off, Ryan. KK Arnold is the fifth best player on the team already. She should probably start right away. Oh, this has me ready for the episode that you and I have every year, our annual starting lineup video, right? I doubt Gino will go that route, but KK has a couple of months to convince him. Yeah, and she has a couple of months to convince you and I, Ryan, because I can tell you what, some people might agree or disagree, but hey, now I cannot wait to sit down and draw up my starting lineup.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting. Look forward to that episode each year. But I would agree with that. KK is definitely talented enough, and she's definitely proved it through those 4 games of the European tour that she can be a starter on this team if need be. Obviously, a lot of competition in front of her with Nika, AZ, Caroline, and Paige. But if there's anything like the past 2 years we've seen with injuries, I think there's definitely a good opportunity that KK would have an opportunity to start. But obviously not hoping for all those injuries. But I would agree with that. If Gino needs somebody to start in that guard position, KK has definitely proven that she is more than capable of getting the starting nod for the Huskies.
All right, Ryan, let's a simple one here, a simple quote. Make it a September to remember. Yeah, I mean, you can't say it any better than that. Ryan, we're just about a little over 12 hours away from turning the calendar September 1, Ryan. It's been a pleasure this summer as we move forward. Always hate to see the summer go, Ryan, but I'm not too sure when you and I will be back on the pod. It won't be too long. We promise everyone that. But if I don't see you before Labor Day, happy Labor Day to you and everyone, Ryan. Be safe as the pool covers. I know we talked about the pool covers coming off. Now, Ryan, around the country, the pool covers are unfortunately going back on. Phil and Rye right here on Listen Up.